We are the Church of the Larger Fellowship, a Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundaries. We believe in cultivating curiosity and transformation that is rooted in profound love. The COVID-19 pandemic has irrevocably shaped how connections are formed in congregations across the United States and the world. The Church of the Larger Fellowship is committed to being a resource within Unitarian Universalism and beyond. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine Quest to our online community hub and our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community, even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison. The CLF supports the ministries of those who hold target identities: Blue, Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism; Trust, Transgender Religious UU Professionals Together; and Drum, Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries, just to name a few. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed, even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The VUU. The VUU is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Voices of Unitarian Universalism. I am Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she and her, and I come to you from the land of the Coast Salish people, also known as Seattle, Washington. And the weather here is, gray, going to be sunny. It's all seasons here except for snow on any given day once it becomes fall here in Seattle. Michael, how are you? Where are you?
Greetings, everyone. I'm the Reverend Dr. Michael Tino. My pronouns are they and them. And I am coming to you from Peekskill, New York, in the Hudson Valley, the land of the Quechuan, Wappinger, and Munsee Lenape peoples. It is the end of summer here. It is warm and sunny and beautiful. And like all of the end of summer flowers are releasing all of their pollens into the air
Oh,
for
no.
that end of summer burst of je ne sais quoi. And it's all good. It is a beautiful end of summer. It is warm. It is the perfect weather for children to play outside. So when my kid gets home from school, she has like plenty of time to play outside with friends, and it's that kind of thing. And I'm ready for fall.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm ready for fall too, right? So today we have one of the first of 4 episodes leading up to the very important and impactful election, US election, United States election. UU, the vote is here. And so before we jump in, I just want to take 2 minutes to name that the debate happened, the first one between the former president and Vice President Kamala Harris, and it was quite a show.
That's a way to put it.
That's a thing to
I
say.
mean, you know, I think it's important to note that humor is an important coping mechanism
Yeah.
to identify um, viewpoints that should be considered extreme and like unacceptable, and um, as we laugh at some of the things that were said, we have to be really clear that what the former president was doing was activating uh, racist tropes to
Yeah.
dehumanize immigrants, to dehumanize people with uteruses, to
Yeah.
and like some of the things were dog whistles. They were just plain dog whistles to activate his base into attacking, sometimes physically attacking,
Yeah.
um, Haitian immigrants, Latino immigrants, and other people who have come to this country in part because of the things that we've done to ruin the countries that they come from.
Good morning.
So, but like, they're really egregious things that were said.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like when
And
debate moderators have to say, "No, sorry, that's just wrong." Like you have reached a different level of political discourse, which I put in big scare quotes for people who are listening to
yeah,
the audio podcast.
for real. Which brings us, I mean, one of this collaboration between You the Vote and the CLF is so important, because one of the questions I've asked myself, both as a faith leader and just as a Unitarian Universalist, how do we show up centering our values at this time, right? How
Mhm.
do we, this is beyond one political party or another. This is about the kind of society we want to live in. So to that, we have our two,
Well, yes.
yay. We have today with us from Side of Love, Nora Rassman, direct democracy strategist with Side of Love, and Nicole Presley, director of organizing strategy on the Side of Love team at the Unitarian Universalist Association. Welcome. Now, I want everyone to know that
Hey.
we've been meeting over the summer to plan these episodes. So I'm very, very excited. And I want to start with asking you both to talk about what Side of Love is, what You the Vote is, and how it came about. And welcome.
Thank you. You want me to start, Nicole?
Sure.
Great. Okay. Um, Nicole and I arrived at You the Vote close to the same time in 2020. And Nicole's been holding it down ever since. I departed and have returned and just adore working with her. You the Vote started in 2020 as a primarily virtual opportunity for UUs to take meaningful action connected to the 2020 election. And I think a couple things in the ecosystem that were happening is a knowledge that many Unitarian Universalists have a lot of experience, both participating in electoral and other types of justice work that are campaign oriented. The realization that electoral oftentimes can be an entry point for people to build longer term organizing skills that we need to apply to local fights that happen, whether or not an election season is happening. And that there was a huge move after Trump's first, only election in 2016, to have social movements kind of like fill in and expand the way that we are using our power and building in electoral spheres alongside the many other ways that we believe change happens. So that's kind of the origin of You the Vote, and a lot of the work was initially virtual, and so that meant people getting on phone banks, incredible letter writing that has happened, and in some places COVID safe in-person canvassing whenever possible, which we know is a particularly meaningful type of voter contact work and also changes us. So that was 2020, and let me kick it to Nicole to tell a little bit about what happened in 2022, and then we're here.
Yes. So You the Vote, as Nora said, was created in 2019, 2020, in a faithful response to what we were witnessing, as well as what we knew about ourselves, which is that we had power. And that is also what Side with Love is grounded in, right? So Side with Love is the public faith-based, program of the Unitarian Universalist Association that helps bring our values to life through mobilizing leaders within our congregation and beyond. It is focused on harnessing deeply and truly the power of love to build vibrant and liberated communities. And to that end, we support Unitarian Universalists, our congregations, leaders, as well as state action networks in taking meaningful action, learning, and building organizing capacity and power around three core issues, of which, of course, is democracy, climate justice, bodily autonomy, and decriminalization. As Nora said, I was honored to be with her in 2020. And since then, we have continued to really equip leaders with skills, develop core analysis of this ongoing political moment to do the fundamental thing, right? So VUU the Vote is a part of Side with Love, which ultimately declares that in any moment, we as people of faith have a choice, and these choices are meaningful. And it is that we can choose to side with love or not. But that is our mandate. And that is why we own our power, we own our agency, that we can actually build and cultivate these justice-based communities, these communities that seek liberation in a chaotic world towards love and towards liberation, and not just be bystanders to this moment.
The thing that we talked a lot about this summer, and we could talk a little bit about the Rising Majority Conference. The three of us were there in St. Louis in the middle of June. But we titled this episode "Navigating the Contradictions and Tensions of the 2024 election." Now, in leftist spaces, it has been profound because I watched 5 minutes of the debate, and then I watched the highlight reel on TikTok, which is always entertaining. But the question I knew I personally wanted to avoid hearing is the answer of what to do about Israel and Gaza and the Palestinian people, maybe not trying to genocide them anymore. I don't know. So these are deep contradictions and tensions because our choices are not great. However, it's beyond the parties, right? So how do you both, I don't know, how do you both kind of navigate that? What do you say to folks? What do you say to yourselves, to each other? I'm curious about the tensions and the contradictions that are very, very alive right now, have always been, but I think it's pretty stark this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. This feels so local. Like I live in Milwaukee. I'm sorry, I also didn't do a visual description at the top. I'm a white woman with my hair pulled back. I'm wearing tortoise glasses, and I'm wearing a white, I don't know, woven shirt with some art and a suffering plant behind me. And I think about how this conversation is like playing out at the most local level, and then kind of like how we understand our role and relationship to the office of the president very broadly. And so I think for us, I kind of take solace in this like framework that a lot of social movement leaders have used over the last year, and including Marisa Franco from Mi Gente, who is like talking about presidents and national leaders broadly as like targets, not saviors. So like, who are the people who are possibly more permeable to pressure from social movement demands, and how do we shape the conditions so that people who get elected are potentially more petitionable? And that feels like a really hard thing around Palestine, because you're like, the current leadership has been quite unpetitionable. And so this, I think that is like the core contradiction in how people themselves are moving, and then how organizations are like asking people to consider showing up. But I think that in my understanding and like kind of corner of the world and folks that I'm like listening to, it's really kind of how do we understand this election in the broader context of presidential campaigns in the United States, and how do we recenter our work to align with organizations who have skills and capacity and relationships to really show up after November 5th. We did a panel in Philly last week where Nick O'Rourke was quoted, and he talked about voting should be the last social action that you take because you've done something 364 days out of the year. And so, yes, like our votes are symbolic, and also like how are they connected to like our broader commitment to a more liberated world. And I say that with an understanding that like where we are ourselves are positioned based on structures of power and domination in the United States and world, and our own identities based on race and class and gender, inform the ways that we are engaging in this election too. And it is not our work to lecture or shame people who are most impacted by these systems of violence of the United States here and around the world, but to really enter with a desire for connection and humility, recognizing that we might not land in the same place, and we still need to be going towards relationships that will make it more possible to move things on the day after the election and beyond. Yeah. What about you, Nicole or Michael?
Well, being a person that has engaged and done electoral organizing for many, many years, I think the reality is that there has always been a tension and a contradiction. We were, as folks say, never, from school board to the president, never electing a savior. But what has happened, and what I do appreciate deeply about electoral organizing, is that it is sometimes the first organizing that folks get into. That it is the first time someone knocks on their door and asks them what they care about, what they want. It is sometimes the first time someone invites them into something that says that they have power and they have agency. And the reality, as we witnessed at the Rising Majority Conference, is that movements must build power to achieve their demands. And I believe that building power means being with people, being humble to actually listen to what their needs are, and doing the messy work of accountability. But we know to achieve anything that we need to build relationships, honest, authentic relationships that actually get at people's own social and political location, that hear people out, and that say, well, what is possible for us to do together? And to that end, I think that that is one of the powerful things about doing electoral work from a faith-based standpoint, not just because, we always say we are prophetic and nonpartisan, right? As a 501c3, it is an IRS designation. That is the limitation. But there are no limitations on our faith practice. And I think when we get into partisan work and we collapse our values, right, and our goals for a liberated future, we then use our faith to endorse the very things that we are fighting against, right? U.S. policy, right, will say, what can we get, right? What can we push through Congress? What will the Senate say yes to, and what will the president sign? And we know that much of the bills over the history of this nation have consistently left people out, particularly Black and brown people, particularly LGBTQ people, particularly poor people. And when we say that our faith is in alignment to any party, it says that we believe that is righteous, that we believe that is good, and we believe that is what people deserve. And that is absolutely not true. But as accountable people, what we are saying is that we are all political agents that have power, and that if we do not work together to build together, we will not win anything. And that is not about an election, because this election will come and go. But what will the texture of our relationships on the ground be? Will you have spent this election season shaming people about their grief and their political action and their political commitments? Or will you have spent it having real conversations about what is it that we are going to build beyond this moment?
Yes. Preach. Yes. Whew. You said
know,
a word.
it's interesting. I taught a class last night for the Church of the Larger Fellowship on process theology, and it was the first part of a two-part class. And the first part was like origins, so it was like very based in these like dead white 20th century dudes, and part two will not be. And that's like, I was very upfront. Like, but one of these dead white 20th century dudes was a theologian named Henry Nelson Wyman, who part of his theology was that goodness comes about in the universe when we are willing to be transformed by the relationships that we're in. Right? So I listen to what you're saying, Nicole, and I think, if we go out there and listen, right? If we go out there and meet people, if we go out there with an understanding that we have to be accountable to folks who have been marginalized in our society, who have been shut out of power in our society, then we have to transform ourselves by that listening.
Yeah.
Right? We have to transform ourselves by that relationship, and that is increasing goodness in the universe, in the society, in the world, and we're modeling something, right? We're modeling something that doesn't get done a lot, and I think that's a theological statement too.
So I think the thing where people get stuck, and I'm going to say white liberals because that's what I'm talking about, where white liberals get stuck, here's the least helpful thing that comes out of people's mouths that I've seen on social media. When people, especially to Palestinian Americans, to say to them it will be worse if X gets elected, if the hate pumpkin gets elected, fuck you. They're watching their entire culture be wiped off the fucking planet, and you're saying it's going to be worse. Like, have some fucking empathy. Start with empathy. Start with some kind of acknowledgement of the garbage that's going on now. I'm only talking about Palestine. There is Sudan that now has a famine of biblical proportions. We have the Congo. The fuck. Like, I think that the missing empathy and not starting with, we have to have an acknowledgement of how terrible things are now, right? And I think that's where folks are missing, because that shuts down. You're not going to get anywhere when you're telling somebody who's, their entire generations that have been already wiped out. And I need people to stop using that 40,000 number in Palestine. We are well over 200-300. Who knows we don't know what the number is of dead people just in Gaza, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to derail us, but I'd love to hear from, really the three of you. But Nicole, what comes up for you? How do we continue to center our values? Because I go to anger when I hear that, when people go to, well, the hate pumpkin's going to be worse. Well, fuck you, obviously. And that's not helpful, because you have both of them saying, we are going to keep doing this. We're going to blah, blah. I'm going to stop talking.
I think a lot of it is about a combination of humility and being a human, which I think we have to own the ways in which living under an oppressive and genocidal system, and I don't mean genocidal out to other countries and peoples. I mean, we are a nation founded through a genocide. And whether that genocide is quick or slow, like keeping lots of people in poverty, the way people die through not having access to healthcare, right? Are completely ignoring of the realities of COVID-19 and collapsing all of these systems that help people get care, get vaccines, have access to masks. We have a system in which that doesn't center humanity.
That's
period.
right. Exactly.
And we cannot pretend that that does not have an impact on us and how we understand ourselves as human and other people as human. I think that, you know, people say like there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. Well, then there too is no pure ethical and moral political action under empire,
Right.
right? And so what
Mhm.
do we do given that fact? That
Yes.
these are the conditions.
Right.
And what organizing about is building power to shift those conditions. And we have always, there has never been one movement that said, hey, we 100% agree on the
Right.
strategy and on the tactics. And there's also, right, no movement that can say, well, this is what won it, right? There are
Yeah.
many strategies and tactics, but here's the one that actually won the day. It is us using all of those. And so I don't. Why argue with someone who withholding your vote is a political action?
Yeah.
And it does have, in fact, a logic to it.
Yeah.
And that is just fact.
Yeah.
Casting a ballot is also a political action. And it also has a logic to it. But here's what I do know is that at the end of the day, after this election, what happens next will be about if all of us can actually come together and get something done.
Yes.
And so how
Yes.
we behave now absolutely
Yeah.
matters. The last thing I will say, and this is like, you know, kind of electoral organizing language. When we talk about talking to voters or knocking on doors, phone banking, whatever it is, we talk about, can you be a trusted messenger? How am I to believe that you have a vision, an idea, an imagination of liberation that includes me when you have told me that you do not care about my issues, you do not care about my grief,
Right.
you do not care about my people? You are
Yeah.
no longer a trusted messenger. So even off of strategy, if you want to win anything, if you want to build power anywhere, yelling at people, shaming people,
Yeah.
silencing people is always a bad strategy.
So you're saying that like moralistic finger wagging is not going to prepare us to build like coalitions for justice on November 6th?
I love trusted messenger because that's it's to your point that like what I say to people is I choose which cognitive dissonance to live in because I live within empire. I live
Yeah.
on stolen land, right? I buy things. I own a car. I don't even have a hybrid car. Like I'm consuming. So I am not under any delusion that I'm not living within empire. So within that, what are the ways that I navigate trying to do the best I can? And I thank you for the trusted messenger. There needs to be a sermon there that we need to do because I love that because it is a complexity because that's how empire stays empire is we start. I mean, I find myself like on the 24th, I'm going to do a one drop-in workshop. It's not it's a workshop, but a discussion. How do we not other people? It is hard for me. Like I literally refer to the former president as the hate pumpkin. I try not to say his name. That's not very, you know, values based of me. It is not very, and I also think he's given up the rights to being called human. Okay. But I think being a trusted messenger for those of us who are working as hard as we can to humanize the empire in which we exist. Thank you for that. I'm working on it too. I'm a work in progress. So I appreciate that framing so much. And I imagine when you have so you had folks, if I wanted to hear more about what happened in Pennsylvania, you had folks canvas. So how do you support people to be trusted messengers?
Yeah. Building trust is hard and it can be broken fast. And so I think that a lot of where our work has oriented and the work that we did in Philly over the weekend is like embedding within an organization that is like trying to show up in community year round. And so this is like we did some door knocking with 1PA, which is a Center for Popular Democracy affiliate, who are specifically organizing Black, Brown, and working class folks in Pennsylvania. And we were door knocking in Delaware County, which is just southwest of Philly. And, you know, I think that part of their work is building campaigns where they have wins and people see material shifts in their own lives that then create the opportunity for trust, right? It is like, okay, you said you were about this thing. We're gonna, you know, get some rent control legislation passed locally. Great. Now for 3 years, we put all of our love into it and we win, and it changes people's actual lives. And so I think like part of trust is the long haul work and a deep understanding and listening to what are the conditions that people are actually living through. And there are like significant barriers to that when we don't share class and racial identities and backgrounds, and like the way that white liberals specifically communicate or our kind of like emotional intelligence and regulation sometimes has been profoundly disrupted because of white supremacy. And so we're just like awkward, and people are, you know, looking for deep, meaningful connection, and that requires time, obviously. And so I think just like going back to what y'all were talking about earlier around how do we build trust, I think part of it also is like this thread, and you kind of touched on briefly around grief and kind of like what is the like, how do we tell the truth about like what people are suffering through, and how do we both acknowledge it and like what do we have to bring and offer. I think that we have so much to learn from the ways that people are creatively incorporating spiritual ritual into organizing spaces as like an expectation of like, this is how we build a container together, and this isn't something that theoretically we can offer and we can bring. And particularly in the context of people who have a lot of spiritual or religious trauma. And so what does it mean to have humility? And I think that's true within Unitarian Universalism. Like I think about my parents, like trauma from Catholicism. I was raised UU. The three of us have not processed that together. And so our congregations, especially for people who come as adults to find this faith, I think like many have previous religious trauma that might inform the way that we then engage with people in the world who might also have trauma. And so I think that I am curious about kind of like what are the opportunities that we have specifically around building space to like hold this grief, which I think is part of what you're saying, which is like we have to be able to reckon with the truth of what people are living through, because some of the denialism is really like where people no longer, trust is totally broken at that point if people's lives actually aren't being acknowledged. And so becoming a trusted messenger is hard and it can be broken. And I think that it is like worth trying. And yeah, so that's what I would share.
I mean, that seems to me a big deal. If you, the vote, is working for, and I'll use for particularly, local organizations that have slowly and methodically and accountably built up trust and community organizing and power, built up power in their communities in Philadelphia and Delaware County. They're like, we're coming in, like our UU people are coming in and need to like check themselves at some level, because we're working for other people who've been doing a lot of work for a long time. Not really a question.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it comes with like us being honest about who our people are and kind of like the variety of people. Like, so it's like trusting that an organization knows what their strategy is, and like based on necessarily who our people are, who are varied in race and class and gender. Like how do we support the strategy that they're trying to build? But yeah, I think that it's important, and I think like just like to be transparent around kind of like the who are we partnering with as you use a vote, depending on the state, and if there's a state action network there. Like our dream is obviously building relationships with organizations that local UUs could theoretically then become long-term participants and volunteers and organizers with, right? And in some cases where there are really urgent fights, like I'm thinking about Arizona and Florida, we are partnering with coalitions that are led by long-term organizing groups in Arizona and Florida, but these are coalitions running amendment campaigns. So the campaign infrastructure will no longer exist after abortion gets reinstated in those two places on November 5th. The organizations that are holding it, like Healthcare Rising in Arizona, for example, will continue.
I think part of the work organizing in the United States is transforming kind of the culture in the United States of individualism, because it leads into politics. I mean, everything's political. But actualizing majority, there were, there's only one not BIPOC-led, or like there are Black-led organizations, Arab-led organizations, there are people from all over the world.
Aisha, you're getting
I
garbled again.
Damn it. Okay, now? No? All right, somebody else speak, and then when I hate technology. Okay, I was going to talk about rising majority.
Okay. I heard a little bit of what you said, and you were talking about it being, a lot of BIPOC-led organizations, and I think there is something to say about us understanding what it means spiritually and politically to deign to take leadership from impacted people broadly, right? Whether that is disabled folks, trans folks, poor folks, immigrant folks, BIPOC folks. That it is not an endorsement of like everything they do must be right, right? That is not what we are saying. We are saying that, right, the folks that are closest to that issue also have knowledge that is essential in developing the solution to that issue. We are saying that we have a recognition of humanity problem, and that textures our politics always of who gets left out and who gets included. We have passed labor laws in this country that have left out Black and brown domestic workers. When we pass, gay marriage, we left out disabled people. I'm still feeling a little raw about, I'm not included in the people that got student loan forgiveness, right? We clearly left people out in the GI Bill. And what happens, particularly every election season, or when it gets time to pass a bill, we say, this is all we can get. We tried our best, but we shouldn't just throw away this thing that is good enough, right? And how many times are you going to say this is good enough to people who are never included? And knowing that is real, right? And knowing that what I do not believe, and this is my own personal practice in organizing, I will never tell anyone to sacrifice themselves in their humanity, right? I cannot say, if there's a piece of legislation that is going to save your life or save the life of your family, right? I can't say, make a political statement and don't support it anyway, because we know it let these people out. I cannot do that. You are, in fact, not a trusted messenger when you deliver a death message to someone. Come on board to the thing that is going to be ruinous for you. However, what we can say is that knowing that happens, and knowing, because these communities, right, do not have political power within this system. They have political power, but when it gets filtered through a federal bill, when it gets filtered through the electoral college, right, there are people who are literally stripped of power. So why aren't those the people who we are building power with day in and day out? Why aren't we with those people building up their membership, building up their political power, so we don't have to make those really gut-wrenching political decisions come pass a bill time, come elect a candidate time?
Does my sound better?
Yes.
That was awesome. You cannot be a trusted messenger when you deliver a death message. I don't even, thank you. Yes. Yes. And Michael.
Did you want to ask your question about individualism, Aisha?
I guess what was coming to me as everyone was speaking was, okay, I'm going to use the analogy. It's not an analogy, but the absolute truth of Black women, women who were have been detained by immigration, have been forcibly sterilized. People with uteruses have been forcibly, right? So they do not have bodily autonomy. White women paid attention and started marching in the streets when Roe v. Wade got overturned. So it's a collective individualism of, until it impacts me, I'm not going to give a fuck. And so I think that's where part of the movement and collectivism that I'm hoping, and maybe I'm just projecting what I want to see happen, hoping is that now there's more of a recognition of what Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Arab spaces have known is we have to work for the collective. It cannot just be for an individual cause. So that's what I wanted to say, is that's part of what I kind of have been experiencing. So Michael, do you want to read the question we have from the audience?
Sure, and I can put it on the screen for those of you who are watching. Larry asks, how do we older white male or male identifying UUs present this message and be heard? My experience is being seen and heard as a significant source of the oppression problem. I think Larry is speaking to this notion of being a trusted messenger. So, how does
yeah?
Can
I want to marinate on that, but I want to respond to Aisha's, which I think kind of there's some threads between the two questions. My understanding of, and I think that like repro justice organizers will say this like time and again, they're like, Roe is the floor. Roe is the barest of minimums.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a critique of what we heard on Tuesday night, because no one on the stage was like, I am pro-abortion. We know there will always be circumstances that require people to be able to access abortion at any time. And so I think that part of it is, what do we really understand as possible within the imagination of the United States government and what we can actually expect from them? And knowing that the collective that you're talking about is a type of care that really like is unregulated and through community and relationship. Yes. And like the state is, metal, but kind of irrelevant in the context of actually caring for people. And so understanding that like the legal protection for abortion access will always be, there will always be this kind of back and forth, because there will always be exception, like even if, Roe does become the floor, right? And we do have something that is much more expansive, until there is a much broader societal shift where structures of domination and oppression and white supremacy crumble, there will still be disparate access that people experience. I think about in Wisconsin, where like pre-Roe falling or being overturned, there were 3 abortion clinics in the state that I live in, and it's a state of like 6 or 7 million people. Like that's bananas. And so I just think about all the places that like the collective care has been happening always, both from like through abortion funds, but also through much more informal networks of people who I'm sure do kind of like care and birth justice work, and also like abortion access for people who can't access it for whatever ways. And I think that that's actually been an interesting part of doing this abortion organizing this year, because there it is it is something that many UUs are so clear about. And so it is abortion, our work is really to say like, yes, we need to reinstate abortion access, and our work is to have us build a broader politic around reproductive justice, which is a Black women-led analysis that is celebrating 30 years this year, and as being formally recognized, though I'm sure, you know, many centuries long, but it's like the right to be able to have kids when you want to or not. And when you do choose to have kids, be supported in it. And so I think that how we use these opportunities that are temporary and have huge influxes of money to bring people into a bigger conversation about, great, what happens on November 6th? How do we ensure that even if these things get reinstated in places that we're working for, we know there will still be profound exceptions and many people who will have to travel out of state. And so how do we continue to show up for folks in those places?
Yeah, and I mean, before Roe was overturned, we had a national crisis of maternal mortality among Black and Brown and Indigenous women. I mean, that's not going to go away if we reinstate the floor. If we reinstate that floor.
Well, and I guess my point in bringing up the what was happening to Black women who are incarcerated, people with uteruses who are Black people and brown people, is that had there been an alarm beyond Black and brown led reproductive justice organizations. So I think that's the thing. It's like, when do folks pay attention? When do folks, anyway, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, because I think Larry's question is an interesting one. How do you be a trusted messenger when you embody, or the perception is you are a representation of who has the most currently the most privilege in our society? Nicole, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and this is what I would say to anyone, but are you the best person to deliver that message? That is the first question. What is your relationship to that community such that you think they are in need of a particular type of message? And I wouldn't, like, organizing is a relationship. It is not dictating to anyone. So like, you can't just go and be like, you know, I've seen enough. Here's what you need to do. It is about actually inviting people into an idea. It is about knowing things about them and being in relationship with them and cultivating the thing that which your message is about. There are many things, right? There's like many issues that we could take action on, focus on, talk about, but sometimes it is just not for you to do that. And that is your own, right, like discernment and ethics. But for anyone, it is ask a question before you want to deliver a message. It will tell you a lot about if folks are receptive, if folks trust you. You might learn that, oops, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not saying, Larry, that is you. I am actually going to talk about my own experience. Knocking on doors for over 10 years actually allows you to understand how everyday people understand their social positions, their political locations, their ideas about who they think people should be and what society should be. And you have to enter where they are.
Right.
And sometimes that is not a place you want to enter. There is real work that some people need to do with white Christian nationalists. That is not my work. Not only am I not going to be a trusted messenger, the work cannot be a spiritually completely draining and harmful mission. So there's no answer, but like ask a question, truly discern, and figure out where you can do the work.
Ooh.
So we have to be figuring out where our voice is needed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
You know, when the senior ministers of large congregations gathered in February in Puerto Rico, we were honored by the presence of poet Aurora Levins Morales. And she talked to us at length about her decision-making process of when her voice as a poet is needed in this world. That her voice as a poet, even as a Puerto Rican Jewish poet, is not needed everywhere. It's not needed to respond to every piece of pain in the world or every struggle in the world. And she has this internal process that she goes through. And if more people from dominant identities actually had those internal processes, we'd be better off.
Yeah. I think in conversation with that self-assessment, there's also like, how am I building power with others? I think there's the like, you talk about individualism. You might be familiar with a team of one. There are many teams of one doing incredible justice work, but that's a tough team to really move something.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of it also is like, what are the values and what is the culture of a team that we are building that is welcoming, hospitable, encouraging, humble, has the anti-oppressive analysis, you know? And I think that part of the like in the like, because I see also the comment on the slowness of work, I think there's also the depth of relationship that's actually needed internally to be able to move things, even if that is within a UU context, even within a congregational setting, is so much more powerful when we do it in relationship with other people. And so, yeah, just like an encouragement, a shout out to many of our colleagues on the organizing and strategy team. If you go to Side with Love, we do have a lot of resources that are specifically around congregational organizing and how to broaden and deepen our own teams. Because I think a lot of
and like that's sidewithlove.org, right?
Yep, sidewithlove.org. Thank you. Yeah, come find us. Because I think that part of kind of one of the ways that we combat that individualism is also like by building relationships and trying things with other people. And part of what makes that possible is by being grounded in some shared values of how we're going to be together and how we want to show up in the world.
Yes, I mean, I think that's a good place to put a pin in it for our next episode will be September 20. The next UU the Vote episode. The VUU will be back next Thursday, but UU the Vote on September 26th. One of the things we're going to talk about is what it means to build and block in organizing, what those terms mean, how you all have used them, and I really appreciate this super important, not only conversation, but collaboration. It's been truly enriching for me personally as a person and a faith leader. And I've just been really, really grateful for your work these past few years. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being on The VUU.
Thank you both.
Michael, any last thoughts from any three of you? From the three of you, we have 4 more minutes.
I will just say building a movement, building a team, building an analysis requires other people. I know folks are doing many things in this moment. If they don't involve other people, join something. Join You the Vote. We've got, phone banks around the clock. There are more mobilizations. Join a local organization. Join a protest. Do something, build with people, because we know no matter where you are on the politics, after this election, there is much work to be done, and it's much work that you cannot vote on. Keeping folks safe and cared for is going to be essential to the work now and the work after, and that requires deep trust and being a person that has showed up to a fight before. If you are the new person on the block, it is very hard to join the work around keeping folks safe, mutual aid, making sure that folks have what they need, to resist, and to just stay safe.
Thank you. Nori, have anything to add?
Yeah, just a deep amount of gratitude for you all inviting us, and I'm excited about this collaboration. I think that Nicole reminded me in our prep for this, we were talking a little bit about like, where's our energy going? Our time is precious, and it is one of our like greatest assets, and we have an opportunity to bring a power analysis to those who are our targets, and it is incumbent upon us to stay the course about the people that are around us and that surround us are the folks that are trying to make change and using all kinds of tactics, because we're in shambles and nothing has worked yet. So we're going to try it all. And our work is to show up and love on the people that are taking the biggest risks, that are going to be the most targeted, and to keep our eye on the target, which are the people with power that are harming all of us and the policies that they're creating. And so just like an affirmation to like recenter in the like showing up with care, love, and support for people who we know are already under deep scrutiny by the state, and there's just much opportunity, I think, in those relationships, like Nicole's saying, like show up, be ready to learn, be ready to for your help to be declined, and know that there's a role and opportunity for you wherever you are.
Thank you so much. If folks missed Aisha's introduction at the beginning, I just want to be clear. Our beloved colleagues from VUU The Vote will be joining us on The View 4 times this month and next in the lead up to the US elections. And this is the first of those conversations. So if you have questions that come to you in the coming week, they'll be back on September 26th here on The View.
And if you want to re-listen to this, it will be on a podcast form. It's on YouTube, and it's in on our website and Facebook page. Thank you, and I am so looking forward to the next VUU The Vote episode on the 26th. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Nora, and thank you, Michael. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you all. Take care.
Take care.
Okay, let me see. Hold on. No.
Michael's our producer today.
I'm producing this, and like something is not happening. So we'll get it done.
Okay. I'm gonna learn to do this too, because it's good to have backups. But our LJ, who is our producer, LJ Williams, they are have a class this semester at this time, because Star King doesn't want to cooperate with us. I have to make a call.
Okay.
I'll schedule your classes. Bye.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.